colleague from Arizona for him to make the unanimous consent agreement.
Mr. President, I want to thank the Senator from New Hampshire and the Senator from Maryland. It probably doesn't matter a lot to many of our voters that on this issue, it probably is not something that's uppermost in their minds. But because of your hard work here in the Senate and your in-depth knowledge of the issues and challenges that face this country in what is arguably the most uncertain and turbulent times in the last 70 years, you've taken the time and the effort to learn about this small country, this small, beautiful country whose only wish, its only desire is to be part of our community of NATO so that they can come under the umbrella of protection and move forward with a thriving democracy in a very volatile part of Europe. So I want to especially thank Senator Shaheen and Senator Cardin for their advocacy and affection and appreciation of the citizens of this small country who are only seeking what we sometimes take so much for granted. So I especially want to thank them. And I also want to thank the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Corker, who also was very involved in getting this through. So, Mr. President, if there is objection, and I note the senator from Kentucky on the floor, I will say before I read this, if there is objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of attempted coup. I have no idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin, and I do not say that lightly. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the Majority Leader in consultation with the Democratic Leader, the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 1, Montenegro Treaty Document 114-12, that the treaty be considered as having advanced through the various parliamentary stages up to and including the presentation of the resolution of ratification, that any committee declarations be agreed to as applicable, that there be no amendments in order to the treaty or the resolution of ratification, that there be 2 hours for debate, equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use of yielding back of time, the Senate proceed to vote on the resolution, that any statements be printed in the record as if read, that if the resolution of ratification is agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, that if the resolution is not agreed to, the treaty will be returned to the calendar, and that there be no motions or point of order in order, and a motion to reconsider, and then the Senate then resume legislative session.
Mr. President?
Senator from Kentucky.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable, that a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from New Hampshire.
I would just have to follow up Senator McCain's comments by saying how disappointing it is that we saw the senator from Kentucky come to the floor to object to something that's clearly in the national security interest of this country, to support Montenegro's accession to NATO. It's in Europe's interest, it's in Montenegro's interest, and it's in America's interest. And I mean, I have to agree with Senator McCain. Either he's working in support of Russia's interests in America, or he's holding this hostage for something that's totally unrelated to what we're doing here with Montenegro's accession to NATO. In either case, it's totally inappropriate. When are people in the Senate going to stop holding hostage things that are totally unrelated to the work on the floor of the Senate and start acting like adults and doing what we ought to be doing in this body? And it's so hard to understand why somebody is here doing that. You know, I'm disappointed that he's not willing to come to the floor and say why he's holding this up. If he's got a good reason, he should be here talking about that reason, and let's see if we can find a compromise. But if he's not even willing to come to the floor and talk about it, then what does that mean? What does that mean for the future of this kind of a treaty, and what's Montenegro's right to self-determination and our national security interests? It is just unfathomable. So I think we should all keep coming to the floor on a regular basis, and I'm hopeful that if we do that, that we will eventually be able to find out what Senator Paul's objection is and address that, because we can't let this stay in limbo in perpetuity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I just want to underscore one point here, because people who are watching this may not understand the specific request that Senator McCain made. What Senator McCain asks is that this resolution be brought to the floor of the United States Senate with debate and vote. Every member can voice their views and then vote up or down. Senator McCain is absolutely right. On a vote, there's going to be 97, 98, maybe even more senators voting in favor of this resolution. I hope it's 100 at the end of the day. But we have one senator objecting to the consideration. This is not, we got to have some democratic principles here. This is a national security issue. And I just think we should underscore the point of what Senator McCain was requesting. He didn't ask unanimous consent that it be passed, unanimous consent that we have a chance to vote on it. Each of us could have done our votes, expressed our views. We weren't denying any senator the right to be heard on this issue or to cast their vote on the issue. It is disappointing that one senator has held this issue up, and it is affecting our national security. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
The senator from Arizona.
I thank my colleagues, and I know I speak for 90-some United States senators. Our message to the brave people of Montenegro that are upholding democracy, that have fought against a coup that would have overthrown their government, who cherish freedom, who cherish the alliance that has held so long, for so many years. We will not stop until we ratify your entrance into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I pledge to the people of Montenegro that Senator Shaheen, Senator Cardin, and I, and many other senators will not stop until this resolution is passed and we can strengthen not only Montenegro and nation and NATO, but the region. Mr. President, I yield the floor.